painfully stupid comments presented with the confidence of the sword-fighting guy in the Indiana Jones movie is not an uncommon occurrence in my videos. But usually they'll pick one thing from my video and use that to really showcase how impressive the human brain is. That even in the lack of any neural connections whatsoever, it can still perform basic functions like eating and breathing and typing comments into social media. But occasionally you get somebody with the wit and cleverness of Carl Spackler, and one example just isn't gonna cut it. And we ended up getting that in the comments of my Nikki Haley video. So they start off saying, school choice isn't a bad thing, it's a good thing. Because I had said that Nikki Haley's views on education are pretty trash, because she supports things like voucher programs and charter schools and all that school choice bullshit. And I'm like, no, things like voucher programs robs money from underfunded schools to subsidize rich kids' private school tuition. And then she was like, I didn't say anything about that. I said open school choice is good, but I did say something about that in my video that you're commenting on. That was the point. And then in response to Nikki Haley having been the governor of South Carolina and changing her views on the Confederate flag, she says the Civil War wasn't about slavery, it was an afterthought to Lincoln, and tells me that I should be picking up a history book. Why are you people like this? Now, like General Sherman in Atlanta, I have deconstructed this topic all the way down to the ground repeatedly. If you want the full history lesson on that, you can go watch those videos. This topic should not need to be talked about anymore. It's so fucking obvious that it was about slavery. So I said Lincoln didn't start the war, South Carolina did, and it was absolutely about slavery. And she says, I didn't say that Lincoln started the war, Buchanan did. What? What? Your first comment said the war wasn't about slavery, it was an afterthought to Lincoln. That insinuates Lincoln started the war for a reason other than slavery. And now you're bringing Buchanan into this? Are you drunk or just a Beamer driver? Because that is a lot of unsignaled lane changes. And they get into that tired old trope, it was about taxes. Never mind that the tax tariff policy they are operating under at the time was written by Southerners and was the most favorable to the South that it had been in years. But it's not about taxes. They never even pretended it was about taxes. Go read any of the Articles of Secession. Every single state that wrote an Article of Secession said slavery was the reason for the treason. Like, explicitly, like it wasn't like sly or underhanded or written in code. They're just like, yeah, no, we're doing this cause of slavery. And if that's not enough for you, go read the Confederate Constitution. Slavery is the headline fucking issue. And if that's not enough for you, go read the Cornerstone speech by Alexander Stephen, the fucking vice president of the Confederacy. He doesn't mention taxes at all, but you know what he really gets in detail about? Fucking slavery. When the Confederacy started the war and fired the first shots of the war, they weren't shy about saying why they were doing it. They all got together and they wrote it down and they're like, yeah, the reason slavery. That's it. That's the whole reason. That's the only reason is slavery. That's the one. It would take the cognitive ability of frozen roadkill to try to make the argument that the Civil War was about anything else other than slavery. And then you switch gears and change lanes again to defend Nikki Haley's racist immigration policy that would force people who aren't white to carry around identification proving that they're allowed to be here. Forcing brown people to carry around identification to prove that they're legal brown people is wrong morally and ethically. But it's also unconstitutional because, you know, the Fourth Amendment exists. Which is why all of those key portions of Nikki Haley's immigrant ID law were, you know, struck down in court because judges read the Constitution and they're like, this isn't constitutional. But you apparently believe you're a better legal scholar than the judges or anybody who can read, and say that, you know, us as white people are required to carry around ID. And I assure you that we have no legal requirement to do that. And you're like, yes, you do. And if you don't, and the cops ask you for it and you don't give them ID, they can take you to jail. And that's simply not true. I mean, like, if you're doing something like operating a vehicle, you're required to have, you know, a driver's license, which is a form of identification. But even then, cops can't just stop you and force you to show them your driver's license. You have to do something that violates the law, or at least gives them reasonable suspicion that you are violating the law. Like, a cop can't just run up to you at a stop sign and be like, let me see your ID. Like, that's not legal. And you can tell him, no, am I free to go? And he has to either be like, no, I'm detaining you for this specific reason, or Okay, goodbye. And that's driving. If you are out walking around just in the wild, enjoying your Sunday afternoon, you have absolutely zero legal obligation to carry ID or to produce identification. If you do not violate a law, a cop cannot detain you and force you to produce identification. Even if you do violate the law, you cannot be penalized for not having identification. That's not a legal requirement anywhere. So either you are that mentally inept on the laws that govern the country that you reside that personally affect you, or you are pretending to be that inept so you can justify racial profiling, and I'm not sure which is worse. In either event, the dunning-Kruger is strong in you. And it's my professional opinion that you should probably take a break from the comments and just social media and, maybe social interaction in general for forever. Ta-ta.